We are back live. Thank you so much for joining us in this second hour of the Sunday broadcast. We're joined by investigative journalist, 3 times #1 New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Credited with winning 1 election for the Republicans and helping win 3 others. And, of course, he formerly worked with the State Department and other areas, and, of course, has several degrees, one from Harvard with dealing with international banking and finance. He was an expert on so many fronts. He's published an article today that I wanted to wait till tomorrow to put out because I wanted to add some of the other breaking news to it. But Merkel Thalen, as we speak, is adding some of the other backup documentation. I mean, this is proven. This is extremely credible. But everybody forgets they admit that the DEA, the FBI, has access to the NSA database and is spying on Americans domestically. They've had congressional hearings. It's been in hundreds of mainstream news articles. But I wanted to remind the public that this parallel construction is going on where they use the NSA spy systems to look at Americans. Then they go and formulate investigations after they have the data from the NSA and go to the courts claiming other evidence, many times fake, to be able to then get the indictments. So if you want to pull that up, just type in parallel construction and you'll get Reuters, Associated Press, you name it, dealing with it. But here's some of the headlines. Dragnet, NSA spying survives 2015 review. And that is a giant illegal domestic spy grid, Electronic Frontier Foundation, going on for at least a decade plus, so several years of George W. Bush. There it is in Reuters. U.S. directs agents to cover up program used to investigate Americans illegally. That's Reuters. NSA files decoded. London Guardian. Edward Snowden's surveillance revelations explained. Confirmed by public documents and congressional inquiries. Again, the Senate spied on, just on budgetary. What are they planning to do with the CIA? The CIA spied on them, not as Chinese spies or anything else, but what are they going to do with our budget? So illegally doing that. That's the New York Times. Here's another one dealing with all of this. U.S. directs agents to cover up program. So it's all right there. Now, we know that Dragnet did exist, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation says at least up to 2016 it's still ongoing. That's a very respected nonpartisan group. But now, we have our law enforcement sources. I'm going to be very careful about this because I don't just do this as a matter of protecting myself. I have law enforcement sources and others, and then I have investigative journalists who have long histories of doing this for decades, like Corsi, who now works for InfoWars, setting up her Washington bureau, who know how to do it legally and lawfully. Because let me tell you, I've talked to lawyers, I've talked to others when I got secret FBI manuals and other things, and I had family that had been in intelligence agencies say, you're lucky you're alive, man. You know, the stuff about veterans are the #1 enemy, there's a national gun confiscation plan, all that stuff nobody believed for a week when we broke it, the MIAC report, remember the veterans of the terrorists, and then Napolitano, Janet Napolitano, the bad Napolitano, not Judge Napolitano, came out and said, oh, yes, we are saying the veterans are the #1 enemy. That's a real manual. Well, this is bigger than that, okay? It's up on Infowars.com. NSA database documents NSA electronic surveillance of Donald Trump in Trump Tower and Alex Jones in Texas. And it goes through it and has screenshots of the real documents, but the phone numbers are X'd out, and that's done in the database until you get authorization to get into it. You have to have secret clearance to get into it. But when state police and federal law enforcement want it, they've got to get authorization from special boards that are very shadowy to get into it. Then it unlocks it all. But I know these phone numbers. I've called Trump. He's called me on these numbers. It's all right here. Of course, Trump's the president. He knows way more than this when he says he knows he's been surveilled. Well, it turns out he's been surveilled by Obama and even before. So this is huge. It's on Infowars.com right now. We're updating the article and adding new documentation as it goes. So if you've already been looking at it, hit refresh. Let's go to Dr. Corsi. We've got 5 minutes till break. We'll come back. And we have the detective with the cold case posse with the outgoing sheriff in Maricopa County, Sheriff Arpaio, who's been bravely involved in all this as well. So give us a boil down of how big this is, Dr. Corsi.
Well, this is a tremendous find. I mean, Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio have had project database records they got from a whistleblower. They've been proving them out. They've had them since 2013. Now, it was really over the past week when I started talking with Mike Zullo, and we realized that Donald Trump was in this database. He searched it for it, and we're posting it on InfoWars right now. Donald Trump has been wiretaps, electronic surveillance, all over the place. Certainly Trump Tower, but also Mar-a-Lago, various companies that he's owned, golf courses, since 2004. Continuing into 2009 when Obama came into office, and we have no reason to believe it quit. Now, you can't read them, but they come out as these huge pages of logs and logs and logs that show the names and the businesses, the addresses, the phone numbers that were harvested.
And to protect the innocent, we're only releasing very limited amounts.
Right, we're really going to try to be very careful in what we're going to release on this, because we're not printing the actual documents. But there's probably 1 million records, 1 million people's under electronic surveillance in this one database that was handed over to law enforcement and Sheriff Arpaio's office. And what it shows is that everybody associated with Trump, in other words, once the NSA picked up Trump, anyone Trump called was then picked up as well. So you've got a whole list of his employees here, and we're listing the employees. I think we'll want to make sure we don't include the phone numbers that was in some of the original records, but I've redacted everything. Phone numbers aren't there, so you could, but call them. But project managers, the Trump organization, people running his golf courses.
And by the way, you called me last week with the sources and said, yeah, is this your cell? Yeah, that's my old cell. Yeah, this is your private office. People always come to the warehouse, and then yeah, there it is. I've moved out of that other office too. This is wild. So again, let's talk about the sourcing of this. This is big. I mean, this is huge. This is proving that, oh yeah, and this is just the database we had a hold of, that Obama, when he was in office, was involved in the surveillance of President Trump before he was president.
Yes, and also through the time he was president, Obama was continuing the wiretapping in his Operation Dragnet, and I think he continued it through his entire administration. The point of all this is that, this is, again, documentation that Trump was under electronic surveillance in a much more massive way than I think Trump even realizes. I mean, all of his Trump palace was, they were actually, these records show that Ivana Trump was under surveillance. Fred Trump, which seems to me to be the father, under surveillance. They have employees of Trump. So it's a massive dragnet of pulling in. And it was not only the phone messages, but then they did electronic surveillance of all the financial records. They went and got bank records, they had credit card transaction records, tax records, and it was all compiled into massive databases on Trump going back to 2004, and I think continuing until today.
By the way, it's incontrovertible. That's what I'm having added to the article, that the New York Times said in 4 different articles in January that they were surveilling Trump, that they had the wiretaps, the NSA intercepts. And so we have all these other admissions of the Senate being spied on, you name it. So the claim that Trump's discredited and that none of this happened and that agencies say it didn't happen, well, I mean, we famously have Clapper in front of the Congressional Committee saying that the NSA spies on no one in the U.S. when it's completely admitted they are.
Well, I mean, as I say, we're not going to release the list, but these go on. There's 1 million names on these lists. And what these lists show is the name of the person, the file number, the business, the address.
And the file's key. This is a database of who you want to go in, and then here are the files. So this is a database to index, like a library. Go in, and then you want to hear them, track their whole history. There it is.
And the phone numbers, now all the phone numbers, and law enforcement, Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio has been checking this out for a long time. The phone numbers all check. You saw your own record in this database, Alex, and proved out that was all authentic information.
Oh, it's got a phone number nobody even knew, and it's got an address I use to secretly broadcast out of. We'll be back. Let me come right back to you. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You going to sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you going to be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.
follow me, meet the real me.
All right, due to some of those things going on with security issues, this is a big deal. We started publishing this today. There's more reports coming out in the next week. I've been talking to Dr. Corsi about what he thinks is best. We have done boil downs of what's in these documents and posted them. I think we should black out with just a marker the contact info for people and go ahead so everybody can see. And I think you can just use a computer program, obviously, or my crew can do it, Dr. Corsi. Now that you're part of InfoWars, if you want us to just black out in a whole column the phone numbers, I think we should do like WikiLeaks does. They release it all. I think we should release with the contact info redacted everybody's name so folks know they were being spied on because, again, this comes from law enforcement sources. Now, we know the DEA, state police, these threat fusion centers have access to this dragnet. We know that this is going on. It's been in the news. And we know that Cheryl Atkinson of CBS on Fast and Furious got surveilled by Obama. She confirmed that. So the claim this isn't going on is like saying the sun didn't come up this morning, but they'll either ignore this giant bombshell story or say it's made up. So we've got the detective coming on to talk about this in the next segment. You'll ride shotgun with us. But, I mean, I always err on the side of safety and privacy. But at the same time, maybe if the media challenges this and says it isn't real, then you can't trust MSM, though. You send them the database, they'll put it out. We've run into this before. I don't know what to do because obviously they're going to say this isn't real. Just like, we said Obamacare had death panels or got rid of your doctor or doubled prices. And Gruber said, thank God they're dumb. We just denied it. I mean, we know this is real. We know this is happening. I mean, this is a big deal, though. This is one of the biggest stories in the last year that they've made this big deal saying Trump's wrong. Nobody surveilled him. And they're in the news months ago saying they were surveilling him. But there's nothing in the surveillance, so now they've backed off of it. The intelligence House head, Nunes, says there's nothing there. He was surveilled, but there's nothing there. It's just crazy that they would try to deny in this age of Snowden that surveillance is going on, and that he's the president he knows he was. If we're getting these documentation, imagine what he's getting. I guess that's why he's so confident, because he said in the next week or so, a few days ago, this would come out. I wonder how it's coming out here, Dr. Corsi.
Alex, I'll tell you exactly how it's coming out. On Tuesday last week, when I had the information, I shared it with the White House. President Trump has known about this database and that we were going to break this story since Tuesday. By
the way, let me stop you. I didn't know if you were ready to release that now. Of course, I knew that. And I don't want to say who you're in contact with, but because they'll try to purge him. But, I mean, we're in contact with a lot of folks at the top. Take your time here, Dr. Corsi, even in the next segment. Let's walk through here the fact that they'll say, oh, they got it from InfoWars. No, we got it from law enforcement, just like WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks has this too now. So just explain what's happening.
Well, we got it from law enforcement. That's the Project Dragnet database, the listing of names, phone numbers, telephone numbers, electronic surveillance since 2004 through 2010. I made sure the White House had the raw data on Donald Trump last Tuesday. We also shared it with some key members of Congress, one or two select members of Congress, and we're wanting to go and present this to the Department of Justice. Now, we're going to have one more story. I'll be writing it up tomorrow, and we can prove the extent to which Sheriff Arpaio was wiretapped, electronic surveillance, interference with his court case, and we're going to start to share that information as well with the White House.
And again, I love Arpaio. Whether you love him or hate him, it's illegal. Obama openly sued him. The UN came after him. They went after him. George Soros spent, 30-something million against him, publicly we know of. So if they can do this to him, anybody can do it. This is a lynching of a great sheriff and a patriot and a friend of Donald Trump. So the great news is good law enforcement is not going to sit here while they lie about Arpaio or President Trump.
And Mike Zulu and Sheriff Arpaio are willing to come into Washington next week to brief members of the White House, members of Congress, Department of Justice. All they have to do at this point is ask the NSA to release the Project Dragnet database, the millions of names of people who have been under electronic surveillance.
And the president can review that if he wants privately. He should order them, give me the database. And he's already gotten it from you, but...
Well, they've gotten the ones pertaining to the records of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's narrative, I think, changed last week when they realized that there were records showing he'd been wiretapped, electronic surveillance in Trump Tower. But we've got in here.
By the way, I've got to stop you. I'm going to give you the floor when we come back. But Dr. Corsi, you're a very humble man. I mean, you're the #1 New York Times bestseller 3 times because of your intel connections. Folks, they call us fake news because we're so real. This is one of the biggest stories ever. Is this not one of the biggest stories of your career as a patriot? I mean, this is so big, I can't believe it. And of course, I knew this earlier in the week. I've had to just sit back and let you work, being very excited, obviously, about it. But seeing the president then respond, he checked with databases. They know. This is earth-shaking that they've bet everything against us, saying they didn't surveil him, when they bragged they surveilled him 2 months ago, and now we have the documents.
Well, and Alex, that's why I wanted to show you your record, because you could verify the cell phone or the phone number, the address, which no one knows you had. It's an older address.
And my old cell phone that nobody but family had, yeah.
And he's going to recognize his cell phone numbers. He's going to recognize his father's phone numbers, his wife's phone numbers. His employees are going to recognize his employees' phone numbers.
Trump has called me from these numbers.
Yes, he called you. I mean, I showed some of these numbers in Washington. People recognize them immediately. Trump's cell phone is in here.
Trump's secretary?
Secretary's in here. And every organization he owned. In fact, NSA was even wiretapping the summer house that Trump would stay in. They were wiretapping his golf courses and the people who ran the golf courses.
They even at Mar-a-Lago know when he sold it, he kept a couple of apartments. They know how to target even those very rooms.
Mar-a-Lago's on these lists. Donald Trump was being under electronic surveillance in all through New York.
And that's why he's so pissed. And that's why they've bet everything on saying he's a liar.
And his Chicago operations, anywhere that they had Trump International, those were also being wiretapped. All of his offices over by the United Nations, they were being wiretapped. Operations that they had down on Wall Street were being wiretapped. And then Chicago, at Florida, anywhere Trump showed up. And what really kind of shocked me was Ivana Trump, House of Ivana, with the address and the phone numbers, show up on the list as under electronic surveillance starting in 2004. Now, I mean, again, this is Project Dragnet.
And that's because he came out against the war. This is bipartisan attacks, but it accelerates under Obama. So the big news is here. We've got him in documents surveilled in the Obama era, showing the whole media is discredited.
And also, I mean, he also had already run for president. I mean, he's trying to run for president going back into the 90s. Roger Stone documents that in his book, The Making of the President, 2014. Donald Trump's been a public figure since the 1990s.
That's right. I want to be clear for everybody's safety. The addresses they've published, I am no longer at. But they did publish one of my secret locations. Today we call it bone broth, and for thousands of years our ancestors enjoyed its benefits before it became lost to our modern diets of processed junk. We are now introducing Caveman by InfoWarsLife.com, the ultimate in true paleo nutrition with bone broth, turmeric root, chaga mushroom, and 7 total primal superfoods in a single great tasting formula. Caveman. It's those people living in the wilds having to actually build civilization that are our superior ancestors. And we need to do everything we can to recapture that. Everyone knew that you used all the parts of the animal. You used the meat for sustenance, the fat for cooking, but you used the bones for strength. From the outside structure full of minerals and key cofactors to the marrow that produces the blood for the body. This is the engine of the life essence. I'm a long way from the caveman my ancestors were, but I'm sure as hell trying to get back to that essence that made us what we were, and this is a big part of it. I know you're going to want to check out Caveman Ultimate Paleo Formula for yourself at InfoWarsLife.com today.